Chosen one, there is something happening in your life right now that your spirit already sensed before your mind could fully understand it. God is moving faster than you expected, closing doors you kept trying to reopen, separating souls you thought would remain forever, and exposing truths that were hidden behind smiles, promises, and emotional attachment. You have been asking heaven for clarity, and now clarity is arriving in the form of distance, silence, sudden endings, and divine separation. What feels painful to your emotions is actually protection for your destiny. God saw conversations you never heard, intentions you never detected, and energies you were never meant to carry into your next season. This is not punishment. This is preparation, because the person called Jay was never assigned to walk with you where God is taking you next. Chosen one, the hardest thing for spiritual people like you is accepting that not everyone who entered your life was sent to stay. Some people were only lessons wrapped in temporary comfort. Some were distractions disguised as destiny. And some were assignments sent to test whether you would choose emotional attachment over divine obedience. God watched how much of yourself you poured into Jay. He saw the sleepless nights, the overthinking, the constant hope that things would somehow change. He saw how your spirit kept trying to warn you, while your heart kept trying to hold on. But now heaven has stepped in, because what you could not release emotionally, God is removing spiritually. You keep wondering why things changed so suddenly, why the communication feels cold, why the energy feels different, why the connection no longer feels protected the way it once did. But chosen one, the answer is simple. God removed his covering from something that was never meant to continue into your future. The confusion you feel is the sound of an unhealthy soul tie breaking apart. And even though part of you still wants to understand every detail, heaven is asking you to stop chasing explanations and start recognizing divine intervention. There were things happening behind the scenes that you were never meant to carry. God heard conversations about you that would have shattered your trust. God saw hidden jealousy disguised as support. He saw manipulation hiding behind affection. He saw how your light irritated unhealed parts inside Jay. And while you were trying to save the connection, heaven was trying to save you. Chosen one, some people love your energy until they realize they cannot control your destiny. They celebrate you until your growth reminds them of everything they refuse to become. And once your spiritual elevation begins, insecure people start reacting to your light instead of appreciating it. Jay may have smiled in front of you while silently resisting your transformation behind your back. That is why your spirit felt exhausted every time you tried to force peace where God had already removed alignment. The reason this separation feels so intense is because your soul invested deeply. You believed the connection meant something permanent. You imagined future conversations, future memories, future healing. But God can see beyond emotions. He sees timelines. He sees outcomes. He sees what people become when they refuse to heal their darkness. And before someone could delay your assignment any longer, heaven accelerated the separation process. This is why everything feels faster than expected. One moment you were trying to fix things, and the next moment the entire connection started collapsing. One moment you were hoping for reconciliation, and the next moment signs started appearing everywhere. Delayed messages, sudden distance, misunderstandings that could not be repaired, emotional coldness that felt unnatural. Chosen one, these were not random events. This was God removing access. Because sometimes God will make a connection uncomfortable on purpose, so you stop romanticizing what was quietly destroying your peace. Sometimes heaven will allow someone to reveal their true nature, little by little until your spirit can no longer deny the truth. And when the separation finally happens, it feels shocking only because your heart was still holding onto an illusion your spirit had already outgrown. You need to understand something powerful tonight. God is not removing Jay because you are unworthy of love. God is removing Jay because you finally became too valuable to stay connected to confusion. There is a difference. For too long you tolerated emotional inconsistency. You tolerated mixed signals. You tolerated feeling spiritually drained after every interaction. You kept trying to earn clarity from someone who benefited from keeping you emotionally uncertain. But heaven is breaking that cycle now. God is teaching you that real alignment does not require you to abandon your self-worth just to keep someone close. Chosen one, your future requires peace, discernment, and spiritual focus. But every time you tried to rise higher, something about that connection kept pulling your energy backward. You felt it. The anxiety, the heaviness, the emotional instability, the constant feeling that you had to explain your intentions just to be understood. God watched you shrinking yourself to preserve a connection that was slowly suffocating your spiritual growth. And what hurts the most is that part of you still remembers the good moments, the late-night conversations, the feeling of familiarity, the moments where it seemed genuine. But chosen one, even toxic connections have beautiful moments. That is what makes them difficult to leave. The enemy never hides destruction inside obvious darkness. Sometimes it comes wrapped in comfort, chemistry, and emotional dependency. God is showing you now that attachment is not always alignment. Just because someone entered your heart does not mean they were assigned to your destiny. Some people arrive only to reveal wounds you still needed to heal. And Jay triggered wounds inside you that God no longer wants controlling your life. The fear of abandonment, the need for validation, the habit of overgiving, the tendency to ignore red flags, because you saw potential instead of reality. Heaven is breaking those patterns now. That is why you have been feeling emotionally pulled in two directions. One side of you wants to move forward, while another side keeps replaying memories and wondering if things could still be saved. But chosen one, if God is removing someone rapidly, stop praying for ways to keep them. Start praying for strength to release them completely. Because the faster God removes someone, the more urgent the protection usually is. There are blessings waiting for you that cannot enter while old attachments still occupy your spirit. There are opportunities, divine connections, healing seasons, and spiritual breakthroughs trying to reach you. But some doors only open after certain people leave your life permanently. Jay was connected to a version of you that is dying now. The new version of you carries different discernment, different standards, different spiritual authority. You are no longer willing to betray your peace just to avoid loneliness. You are no longer begging for clarity from people who enjoy confusion. You are no longer chasing temporary affection while ignoring permanent disrespect. And that transformation threatens people who benefited from the old version of you. Chosen one, listen carefully. When God removes someone from your life quickly, do not interrupt the process by running back to familiarity. Familiarity can become spiritual bondage when it keeps you connected to cycles God already ended. The pain of separation is temporary, but the damage of disobedience can delay your destiny for years. Your spirit knows this connection was becoming unhealthy long before your mind admitted it. That is why your intuition kept speaking through discomfort. You felt uneasy after certain conversations. You noticed energy shifts you could not explain. You sensed hidden tension behind simple interactions. But because you loved deeply, you kept trying to rationalize what your spirit was warning you about. God is not asking you to hate J. He is asking you to release J. There is a difference between bitterness and discernment. Bitterness chains you to the past. Discernment frees you from repeating it. And heaven wants you free now, because where you are going next requires emotional maturity, spiritual clarity, and complete trust in God's timing. The separation is not evidence that you failed. Sometimes losing someone is proof that your prayers are finally being answered. You prayed for peace, and God removed chaos. You prayed for clarity, and God exposed confusion. You prayed for protection, and God removed hidden danger. But because the answer arrived through loss instead of comfort, part of you struggles to recognize it as a blessing. Chosen one, there are moments when God will remove someone before you fully discover how deep their intentions truly were. Not because he wants you confused, but because he loves you enough to protect your innocence from further damage. Some truths would break your heart unnecessarily. Some betrayals do not need full explanation for heaven to justify separation. Trust what God is doing even when your emotions still feel attached. The version of you that emerges after this separation will be stronger, wiser, calmer, and spiritually sharper than ever before. One day you will realize that losing J was not the destruction of your future. It was the rescue of your future. One day you will look back and understand why every delay, every unanswered message, every uncomfortable shift, and every painful moment had to happen exactly the way it did. Because God was accelerating your freedom while you were still trying to preserve your captivity. And right now, even though part of your heart still aches, your spirit is beginning to breathe again. You are starting to notice moments of clarity between the sadness. Moments where your mind feels quieter. Moments where your energy feels lighter. Moments where you no longer feel responsible for fixing someone who never truly wanted to heal. That is the beginning of restoration, and the more distance God creates between you and J, the more clearly you will begin to see everything your emotions once tried to hide from you. Chosen one, the reason God had to move so quickly is because delay was becoming dangerous. You kept trying to hold together something heaven had already judged unstable. Every extra moment you stayed emotionally attached to J was slowly draining your confidence, your discernment, your peace, and your spiritual momentum. You thought you were fighting for love, but in reality, you were fighting against a divine transition that had already begun in the spirit. There are people who enter your life carrying hidden storms. At first, they appear comforting, exciting, familiar, even healing. But over time, their unresolved darkness begins attaching itself to your emotional world. Suddenly, you feel heavier without understanding why. Your focus disappears. Your joy becomes inconsistent. Your intuition grows louder, but your emotions keep trying to silence it. That is exactly where the enemy wanted you. Emotionally attached to something your spirit already knew was unhealthy. Chosen one, God could not allow you to carry the connection into your next season because your next season requires clarity. The doors opening for you are too important to risk contamination from unstable energy. You are entering a period where your decisions matter more than ever. Your discernment matters more than ever. The people around you matter more than ever. And God knows that certain individuals cannot go where He is taking you, because they would sabotage what they secretly envy. You kept wondering why every attempt to restore the connection felt blocked. Why conversations kept turning strange. Why timing never aligned anymore. Why every effort felt emotionally exhausting instead of peaceful. But chosen one, when God removes His hand from a connection, no amount of human effort can restore what heaven has ended. That is why things unraveled faster than expected. God was answering a prayer you were too emotionally attached to recognize. And here is what many chosen ones struggle to understand. Not every person who says they love you actually loves you in a healthy way. Some people love your presence but resent your power. Some people love your attention but fear your growth. Some people want access to your light without respecting the spiritual responsibility that comes with being connected to you. Jay may have enjoyed what your energy provided while secretly resisting who you were becoming. Every time you evolved spiritually, it forced them to confront parts of themselves they were avoiding. Your healing exposed their avoidance. Your discipline exposed their inconsistency. Your spiritual sensitivity exposed their hidden motives. And instead of growing with you, they slowly became uncomfortable around your transformation. Chosen one, your elevation will always reveal who truly supports you, and who only supported the version of you they could control. God saw how often you questioned yourself after interactions with Jay. He saw how you overanalyzed simple conversations, searching for reassurance that should have come naturally. He saw how your nervous system became attached to emotional unpredictability. One moment you felt close, the next moment distant. One day they seemed invested, the next day emotionally unavailable. That inconsistency was not love. It was confusion masquerading as connection. Heaven is not the author of confusion, and the longer you remain inside confusion, the harder it becomes to hear God clearly. That is why the separation had to happen now. Chosen one, there are people who can only remain in your life while you are doubting yourself. The moment your confidence returns, the moment your discernment sharpens, the moment your standards rise, they begin losing influence over you. And unconsciously, they start resisting your healing because your healing threatens the dynamic that once benefited them. Jay may not have even understood their own behavior completely. Hurt people often spread instability without fully recognizing the damage they create. Unhealed people project fears onto those who genuinely care about them. Emotionally wounded people sometimes sabotage healthy connections because chaos feels more familiar than peace. But God is no longer allowing you to become collateral damage inside someone else's unresolved battles. You were never assigned to carry another person's spiritual confusion. You were never assigned to sacrifice your emotional stability just to prove your loyalty. You were never assigned to shrink your intuition to maintain temporary closeness. Chosen one, your compassion is beautiful, but compassion without discernment becomes self-destruction. And God is teaching you now that saving everyone is not your assignment. Some people are committed to cycles only God can break, and until they surrender to healing, no amount of your love will transform them. That truth hurts deeply because your heart always sees potential. You look beyond flaws. You look beyond mistakes. You look for goodness hidden underneath brokenness. But one of the hardest lessons spiritually chosen people must learn is this: potential is not the same as readiness. Jay may have had potential, but they were not ready for the level of spiritual accountability your destiny requires. And because God loves you, He will never allow your future to become chained to someone who refuses to grow. That is why the separation feels both painful and strangely necessary at the same time. Part of you misses them, but another part of you finally feels relief. Part of you still remembers the connection, but another part of you knows the emotional exhaustion was becoming unbearable. Part of you wants answers, but your spirit already knows enough to move forward. Chosen one, stop ignoring the relief hidden underneath the grief. Your body knows when something is no longer safe for your soul. That constant tension you carried around the connection was never meant to become your normal. Love should not make you abandon your peace daily. Love should not force you to constantly decode mixed energy. Love should not require endless emotional survival tactics. God is reteaching you what healthy alignment feels like. Healthy alignment does not leave you chronically anxious. Healthy alignment does not punish you with silence every time you express your needs. Healthy alignment does not make you feel guilty for expecting consistency, honesty, and emotional maturity. You kept lowering your expectations because you feared losing the connection. But heaven is showing you now that lowering your standards to keep someone close only delays the people truly assigned to your destiny. And chosen one, there are real divine connections ahead of you. There are people coming into your life who will not force you to question your worth every week. People who communicate clearly. People who celebrate your growth instead of competing with it. People who recognize your spirit instead of draining it. People who feel like peace instead of emotional warfare. But first, God had to remove the counterfeit attachment occupying space in your heart. The enemy understands something many people ignore. Emotional attachments can become spiritual distractions. If your focus remains trapped inside confusion long enough, you start neglecting your purpose. Your energy becomes consumed by analyzing another person instead of building your future. Your prayers become centered around saving unhealthy connections instead of asking God to strengthen your calling. And that is exactly why heaven intervened. God saw your future crying out for your full attention. There are gifts inside you that still have not awakened completely because so much emotional energy was tied up in surviving this connection. There are ideas, visions, assignments, opportunities, and spiritual breakthroughs waiting for the version of you that finally releases emotional captivity. Chosen one, your destiny requires emotional freedom, and sometimes freedom begins with separation. This is why you keep seeing signs confirming the ending, why songs suddenly hit differently, why old memories resurface unexpectedly, why your spirit keeps replaying lessons instead of fantasies. Heaven is helping you detach emotionally by exposing reality more clearly. God does not want you trapped inside nostalgia. Nostalgia is dangerous because it edits out the pain and magnifies the comfort. It makes you remember isolated, beautiful moments while minimizing the consistent emotional instability that existed underneath them. But your spirit remembers everything your heart tries to romanticize. Remember the emotional exhaustion. Remember how often you cried silently. Remember how often you felt unseen. Remember how often you doubted yourself, trying to maintain the connection. Remember how many times your intuition warned you before your mind accepted the truth. Chosen one, God is not removing joy from your life. He is removing interference. There is a difference. The enemy wants you believing this separation means you lost something irreplaceable. But heaven wants you to understand that what is truly meant for you will never require the destruction of your inner peace to remain in your life. Real alignment multiplies peace. Real alignment strengthens clarity. Real alignment inspires growth. Real alignment draws you closer to God instead of deeper into emotional confusion. Jay was connected to a chapter that is ending now. And yes, endings hurt. Even necessary endings hurt. Even protected endings hurt. Even divinely orchestrated endings hurt. But pain is not always proof that something was meant to stay. Sometimes pain is simply proof that your soul became attached before God revealed the full truth. You are grieving both the person and the future you imagined with them. But chosen one, imagined futures are not always God-ordained futures. God can see roads you cannot. He can see betrayals before they happen. He can see manipulation before it fully manifests. He can see emotional destruction before it reaches its final stage. And because he sees what you cannot, he sometimes removes people while you are still begging for them to stay. That is divine mercy. One day you will thank God for every unanswered prayer connected to Jay. One day you will realize that if certain doors had remained open, they would have delayed your purpose, weakened your confidence, and distracted you from your spiritual assignment. One day you will meet people whose energy feels so safe, so consistent, and so genuine that you will finally understand how much emotional survival you normalized in the past. Right now your heart may still be detoxing from attachment, but your spirit is awakening to truth. And truth changes everything. The more you heal, the more clearly you will see how often you abandoned yourself trying to preserve the connection, how often you silenced your intuition to avoid conflict, how often you accepted crumbs because you feared emptiness. But God is rebuilding your identity now. He is teaching you that loneliness is not the enemy. Misalignment is. Chosen one. Isolation with peace is better than attachment with chaos. Never forget that. Because some people enter your life carrying lessons disguised as love. And until you fully learn the lesson, the cycle repeats itself through different faces. God is ending the cycle now. He is teaching you discernment at a deeper level. He is teaching you to stop confusing emotional intensity with divine confirmation. He is teaching you that chemistry alone is not compatibility. He is teaching you that not everyone who feels familiar is meant to stay forever. And perhaps the deepest truth of all is this: part of you already knew. Long before the separation happened, your spirit sensed it coming. That unexplained heaviness, those random moments of emotional distance, those silent warnings inside your chest, those nights where you suddenly questioned everything without understanding why. Heaven was preparing you emotionally before the physical separation arrived. Because God knew the ending would hurt, but he also knew staying connected would hurt even more in the long run. And now the process of release has begun. Slowly, your mind is untangling itself from false hope. Slowly, your heart is learning to stop chasing what God already removed. Slowly, your spirit is reclaiming the peace that connection kept interrupting. And as painful as this season feels, something powerful is happening underneath the surface. Your standards are rising. Your discernment is sharpening. Your dependence on external validation is breaking. Your relationship with God is deepening. Your identity is becoming stronger than your attachment to anyone who cannot honor your spirit properly. That is why heaven refuses to let you go backward now. Chosen one, the next phase of your life cannot be built on emotional confusion anymore. God is pulling you into a season where your spirit must become stronger than your attachments. That is why the separation feels so intense. Heaven is not just removing a person. Heaven is breaking the cycle of overextending yourself to people who were never capable of valuing your heart correctly. For so long, you believed that if you loved harder, explained yourself better, stayed more patient, or sacrificed more of your peace, things would finally change. But chosen one, some battles are not won through endurance. Some battles are won through release. And God knew the only way to fully free your spirit was to remove Jay faster than your emotions were prepared for. Because if the process had moved slowly, you would have kept reopening doors heaven was desperately trying to close. You must understand this deeply now. God did not remove Jay to punish you. God removed Jay because your destiny was starting to suffocate under the weight of emotional attachment. Your purpose requires focus. Your calling requires spiritual clarity. Your future requires people who can stand beside your light without secretly competing with it, fearing it, or draining it. The version of you being created right now is wiser than before, stronger than before, more discerning than before. You are finally learning that your kindness should never cost your sanity. Your loyalty should never require self-betrayal. Your love should never force you into constant emotional instability. And one day, when your heart is no longer speaking from pain but from wisdom, you will look back and realize that God saved you at the exact moment you thought you were losing everything. You will remember how devastated you felt when the connection ended, but you will also remember how your peace slowly returned afterward, how your mind became clearer, how your sleep became calmer, how your energy stopped feeling constantly drained, how your relationship with yourself became healthier once you stopped fighting to keep someone who was no longer aligned with your spirit. Chosen one, some people are only meant to accompany you until you remember your worth again. After that, their purpose in your life is complete. Jay was not the end of your story. Jay was the lesson that prepared you for the next chapter of your evolution. And even though your heart once viewed them as irreplaceable, God is about to reveal that what is truly meant for you will arrive with peace, consistency, honesty, and divine alignment, not confusion, fear, and emotional exhaustion. So stop mourning what God already removed. Stop begging heaven to restore what your spirit barely survived. Stop reopening wounds that God is trying to heal permanently. The separation happened because your future was calling you louder than your past could hold you. And now, chosen one, heaven is asking you to walk forward without looking back, trusting that every person God removes creates space for something far greater than what you lost.